This might be controversial. Don't let nobody sell you a drink. Your ceiling is not my ceiling. Hey y'all, welcome in or welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about a few things I wish I knew before getting into tech. A lot of this video is going to be my personal experience and a lot of my own opinions, but definitely want to hear what you all think as well, so sound off in the comments at any point during the video. If you see me looking down at any point, I got some notes on my iPad that I'm going to be looking at. So yeah, just to lay some context, a lot of people talk about breaking into tech. I ain't breaking into nothing. I went to school for this, and I pretty much had a clear path and understanding of where I wanted to be at the end of my degree. So for those who may not know, I went to undergrad for computer science, did a couple of internships for being a developer, and absolutely hated it. I realized I just did not like coding, I did not like programming, I did not like none of it. So after that, I did a couple more internships on the business analysis side, project management. So that's kind of how I landed into my current role, and I've been a project manager now for almost 2 years. And that kind of brings me into my first thing I wish I knew, or just things to know in general about getting into this industry, is that the faster you know what you want to do, the better. This is not an industry where you can be a jack of all trades, as it doesn't really benefit you. You would have like surface knowledge of like multiple things, and that doesn't really take you anywhere as far as career goals. The more you niche down into a singular lane of tech, the better. Your knowledge increases, you become a subject matter expert, and then your pay increases. And speaking of surface level knowledge, this might be controversial. I wish I knew certifications, or just like having a ton of them, is not that deep, it's not that serious. Without the practical use of whatever you learned for the certification, if you haven't done a project, if you haven't used the tools and skills in an actual experience, it really is just a piece of paper that said, hey, I knew how to answer some of these questions. A lot of the times especially like during the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people were making it sound like just get a certification and you'd have a 6-figure job. I know they can sell water to a fish. Like I know they can sell water to a fish. Don't let nobody sell you a drink. It is not that easy just to get a certification. It doesn't really put you in the doors you're looking for without some legit experience and projects behind it. If you can't speak to the tools and how you would use them in a practical experience, then it really is, like I said, just a piece of paper. So my take on the certifications, while we're on the subject, is either you already had an experience, even if you haven't used the tool or the skill set in its entirety, you already have an experience that you can speak to using that platform or service or whatever you're getting certified in, and kind of speaks to it that way. Or you're currently going through a project and you know, hey, I'm using Google platform, I'm using Google Cloud right now, or using AWS, and this project is helping me learn how to use the skills and tool set or whatever. And then afterward, then I can get the certification. Those are kind of just the 2 ways I would look at getting certified in anything. It's not enough just to have a certification and not be able to speak to it in an interview, or not be able to use it at your job once they hire you. Don't set yourself up for failure, okay? It's very rare that anyone comes into this industry and makes 6 figures right off the bat without any prior experience. A lot of the times people have gone to school for this, gotten the degrees, and if they haven't, they have definitely put in their 10,000 hours in terms of studying, doing projects, and just doing what is required to show that they have in-depth knowledge of their specific role. Another thing I wish I knew before getting into tech was just how fast this industry changes. If you are online in general, you probably have heard of ChatGPT, and that is an open source AI that has taken the world by storm over the last 2-ish months. I don't even think it's been 3 months. So something that's come onto the scene and been a huge disruptor in less than 6 months is just an example of how fast things move in this industry. And that kind of just brings me into my next point, actually, of just how much you really need to study when you're in tech. Like, this is not an industry where you get in and you think that you made it. There is no making it in tech. Like, you come in and you're always going to be learning. Like, you will never be the smartest person in the room, and if you are, you actually need to reevaluate your life. But yeah, you have to have a strategic and diligent way of upskilling every so often. So a lot of these certifications and just like tech in general renews every 2 to 3 years. So what you learned last year might not apply today, honestly. So you really need to always be thinking of, how can I keep learning? How can I better my craft? How can I stay up to date on what is happening, not only in my specific lane of tech, but what's happening in this ecosystem as well. And that can look like getting recertified, or just making sure that you have specific career goals in mind. What milestones are you trying to hit for each quarter, at the end of the year, things like that. And just make sure that you are consistently bettering your craft. It's one thing for you to get a foot in the door, a seat at the table, or whatever, but it's a completely different ballgame to stay there. So upskilling, continuous learning, continuous development is definitely going to be where it's at in order to have some longevity in this industry. Another thing I wish I knew is that this industry is not foolproof. And we can see that with how many people have been laid off, and not even from like, I don't want to say unknown or like smaller companies, but we're talking about like tech giants that are laying off people by the thousands. And that kind of goes back into what I was saying about consistently upskilling. As long as you are sharpening your own skill set and making sure that you are staying up to speed and getting better at your personal tech craft, you can go anywhere in this industry. Like, these layoffs were nothing personal, and a lot of people had been at these jobs for decades. So it's not a thing about like performance or just like contributions to the company. Sometimes things just happen. The economy is growing slower. People need to cut back on expenses here and there, and these things could happen to anybody. So just making sure that you are ready to pivot at any point. So just making sure you are aware of different trends that are going on, making sure that your resume, your skills are all up to date, making sure that your skills are aligned to show that you can contribute at your next role. Those are all things to keep in mind when you are assessing how quickly this industry changes. So the next one is a bit more specific to me and those who are still considered early phase of their career. Like I mentioned before, I am 2 years into the game. I have 2 years of full-time experience in project management, but I wish I knew everyone's feedback doesn't hold the same weight. And what I mean by that is, so in general, it's best to get specific about your career goals and share that with your development coaches, mentors, or whoever that is contributing to your professional development. Anyone outside of those goals who doesn't really know the ins and outs of where you're trying to go sometimes can't fully speak to what you need to do in terms of giving you feedback. So a lot of times people are coming from the area of projection or bias, or a place where they thought was their own personal ceiling, and it's just like, your ceiling is not my ceiling. So like I said, assess all feedback that you get, but realize all feedback doesn't necessarily contribute to your professional development. But speaking of career goals, I also wish I knew that the tech industry is very much a team sport. I was speaking about career goals, and it's like, you can have those career goals, but you definitely cannot attain them by yourself. You always have to lean on management, your development team, and have an advocate in high places that can speak for you when you are not around. Something my development coach shared with me is that your mentors or development coaches are working with you, talking with you, but you also need an advocate that is speaking about you. And the difference is that the advocate is going to be in rooms that you are not necessarily allowed into or you don't have any influence in. So if you're looking for a promotion, you need to have someone that's like 2 or 3 levels above you, know who you are, know your face, know the work that you put in to speak to getting you to where you want to be. So knowing that tech is a team sport definitely pulls into communication and how you interact with different people across your teams and in the company in general. And that's something I wish I knew in general as well, just how far communication will actually take you. So as a project manager, communication is definitely key. A lot of the times you're going to be talking to different audiences who care about different things. The stakeholders might care about how progression is going in terms of business value and what they expect to see at a certain time. And then other times you're working closely with your development team to make sure that they're understanding requirements and that development is moving smoothly. But just having the skill set to talk to both of those teams and have good communication as far as written and oral communication is definitely key across the board. But I also wish I knew just like interpersonal skills is definitely needed if you're going to make any type of progression in this industry. Once you've developed those interpersonal skills and have great communication with your team, you start to build rapport with them, they begin to trust you, and then you can have advocates in different areas of your company, people that know your face, know your skill set, and they can speak to not only can you do your job, but are you a good person to work with? And that's another thing I wish I knew. Just like, it's possible for you to be assertive and still likable, and you're gonna need both if you want to make any progress towards your career goals. Like, you know what you want, you gotta go out there and take it sometimes. And that's another thing I've learned and still am learning is like, it's possible for you to be assertive and still likable. I feel like that might be something that a lot of first gen immigrants are still like tussling with. At least me though. I felt like right after graduation, I definitely had to people please a lot or make sure that I was just the likable side of it, not rock the boat too much, not ask for too much as far as like what I'm getting out of my job, and just be grateful that I have the job and the bare minimum and all of that. But that's not going to take you anywhere in terms of getting to your career goals, so you definitely have to speak up for yourself. And when something don't feel right, call it out. Like, it's easier said than done sometimes, but definitely at least have someone that you can confide in, or like an advocate that can like speak to that on your behalf. But getting to a point where I'm confident enough to advocate for myself has definitely contributed to the whole being assertive and still likable aspect of what I personally do in tech. Well, those are other things that I wish I knew before getting into tech. But like I said, this industry is always changing, so we're always going to be learning and growing. We might revisit this topic in a couple months and I'll share some more things that I have learned in that time frame. And if you have any other insight about what you wish you knew about tech before getting into the industry, let me know in the comments section down below as well. I'd love to chat it up with you guys. And how are we feeling about this setup? Do we like it for sit down and talk videos? Let me know in the comments down below as well. And if you haven't already, go ahead and like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that, okay? And I'll catch y'all in the next one. Bye. With being a project manager, communication is definitely important, as I'm going to be spiking? What the hell? I wish I knew. I wish I knew.